Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. This video is about the model reading and explanation of the sixth chapter, My Childhood, written by APJ Abdul Kalam. Students, just say before you read, can you think of any scientists who have also been statesmen? Statesmen? A skilled, experienced, respected figure, a person who exhibits a great wisdom and ability in dealing with important issue, who does everything for common good of people and his country. APJ Abdul Kalam, whose projects in space, defense, and nuclear technology guided India into the 21st century, became our 11th president in 2002. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam was a great scientist, but in 2002 he became our 11th president also. So he was a statesman. In his autobiography, Wings of Fire, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam wrote his autobiography, Wings of Fire, and this story, My Childhood, has been extracted from his famous autobiography, Wings of Fire. He speaks of his childhood. He describes about his childhood. He says, I was born into a middle-class Tamil family in the island town of Rameswaram in the erstwhile farmer erstwhile Madras state. My father, Jainul Abdin, had neither much formal education nor much wealth. Despite and spite these disadvantages, he possessed, he had great innate wisdom, natural wisdom, inborn wisdom, and a true generosity, kindness, leniency of spirit. He was very kind person. He had an ideal helpmate in my mother, Ashiamma. I do not recall the exact number of people she fed every day, but I am quite certain that far more outsiders ate with us than all the members of our own family put together. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam says that he was born in a small Tamil family in Rameswaram in Madras. His father's name was Zainul Abdin. He was very kind person and very honest person. He was not very rich, but he had an ideal helpmate, his mother, Ashiamma. She was also very kind woman. She fed every day outsider. As he says, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam says, he was not quite certain that far more outsider ate with us than all the members of our own family put together. The society of Rameswaram was very rigid. All the members of his neighbors Muslim, non-Muslim, ate in his house put together. I was one of my many children, a short boy with rather undistinguished look. Undistinguished, very simple, ordinary look, born to tall and handsome parents. We lived in our ancestral inheritable house, which was built in the middle of the 19th century. It was a fairly large pakka house made of limestone and brick on the Mosque Street in Rameswaram. My austere, very simple and ordinary father, used to avoid all inessential comfort, unnecessary comfort and luxuries. However, all necessities were provided for in terms of food, medicine, or clothes. In fact, I would say mine was a very secure childhood, both materially and emotionally. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam says his parents had many children and he was one of them. He was a very simple boy in his childhood. They lived together in a large pakka house. His father was very ordinary and very simple, so he avoided inessential comfort and luxuries, but he provided all the necessities things as food, medicine, clothes. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam says his childhood was very secure childhood, materially and emotionally also. The Second World War broke out in 1939 when I was 8 years old. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam says that when he was 8 years old, at that time the Second World War broke out in 1939. For reasons I have never been able to understand, a sudden demand for tamarind imli, tamarind seeds erupted, exploded in the market. I used to collect the seeds and sell them to the provision shop, food ingredients shop on Mosque Street. A day's collection would bring me the price, princely sum of 1 anna, princely a generous amount. My brother-in-law Jalaluddin would tell me stories about the war, which I would later attempt to trace, to search, to catch in the headlines in Dinamani. Dinamani is a newspaper name. Our area, being isolated, was completely unaffected by the war, but soon India was forced to join the Allied force, and something like a state of emergency was declared. The first casualty emergency came in the form of the suspension of the train halt. Cancellation of the train stop at Rameswaram station. The newspaper now had to be bundled and thrown out from the moving train on the Rameswaram road between Rameswaram and Dhanuskoti. That forced my cousin Samshuddin, who distributed newspaper in Rameswaram, to look for a help hand to catch the bundle, and as if naturally I filled the place. Shamsuddin helped me on my first wages, my first earning. Half a century later, I can still feel the surge, the pride, the wave of pride in earning my own money for the first time. The Second World War broke out when he was 8 years old. And at that time, the demand of tamarind seed. So he collected the seeds of tamarind and sold them on provision shop. He says that his area was unaffected, but soon the Allied force had something like a state of emergency was declared, because soon India was forced to join the Allied. His brother-in-law Jalaluddin would tell the stories about the Second World War, and next day Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who was 8 years old child, tried to search the stories headline in the Dinamani newspaper. When India joined Allied force, then emergency was declared. So the first casualty came in the form of the suspension, cancellation of the train. So the newspaper Dinamani had to throw from the moving train, and his cousin Shamsuddin, who distributed newspaper, who wanted the help of a Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. So Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam helped to catch the bundle from the moving train, and he earned the first wages. And now he pride his first wages, and he remembered his first wages. Every child is born with some inherited characteristic into a specific socio-economic and emotional environment, and trained in certain ways by figure of authority, elders. I inherited honesty and self-discipline from my father. From my mother, I inherited faith in goodness and deep kindness, and so did my 3 brothers and sister. I had 3 close friends in my childhood: Ramanand Shastri, Arvindan, and Shiv Prakasa. Ramanand Shastri, Arvindan, and Shiv Prakasan. All these boys were from orthodox Hindu Brahmin families. As children, none of us ever felt any difference amongst ourselves because of our religious difference and upbringing, feeding, and growing. In fact, Ramanand Shastri was the son of Pakshi, the high priest of the Rameswaram temple. Later, he took over the priesthood of Rameswaram temple from his father. Arvindan went into the business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims, and Shiv Prakasan became a catering contractor for the Southern Railway. APJ Abdul Kalam says he inherited honesty and self-discipline from his father Zainul Abidin, and faith in goodness and deep kindness from his mother Ashiyamma. In his childhood, there were 3 his close friends: fast friend Ramanand Shastri, Arvindan, and Shiv Prakasan. All these boys were from orthodox Hindu Brahmin families, but none of them felt any difference because the small society of Rameswaram was very rigid, very strong in the term of separation. During the annual Sri Sitaram Kalyanam ceremony, our family used to set up boats with a special platform for carrying idols of the Lord from the temple to the marriage site, situated in the middle of the pond called Rama Tirtha, which was near our house. Events from the Ramayana and from the life of the Prophet were the bedtime stories. My mother and grandmother would tell the children in our family. Dr. APJ Kalam says, none of us felt any difference during the annual Sri Sitaram Kalyanam marriage ceremony function. Our family used to set up the boats, a special platform for carrying idols of the Lord from the temple to the marriage site. And he says events from the Ramayana and from the life of Prophet were bedtime stories. One day when I was the 5th standard at the Rameshwaran Elementary School, a new teacher came to our class. I used to wear a cap which marked me as a Muslim, and I always sat in the front row next to Ramanand Shastri, who wore this sacred thread. The new teacher could not stomach a Hindu priest's son sitting with a Muslim boy. In accordance with our social ranking as the new teacher's side, I was asked to go and sit on the back bench. I felt very sad, and so did Ramanand Shastri. He looked utterly downcast, completely depressed, as I shifted to my seat in the last row. The image of him weeping when I shifted to the last row left a lasting impression on me. A new teacher came when APJ Abdul Kalam was in 5th standard in elementary school, and he saw the accordance with the social ranking, that a Muslim boy sitting with a Hindu boy. He could not stomach, he could not bear a Hindu priest's son sitting with a Muslim boy, so he ordered APJ Abdul Kalam to sit last bench. But when he was shifting, he says, I saw Ramanand Shastri was weeping, and it was a lasting impression on him. After school, we went home and told our respective parents about the incident. Lakshman Shastri called on the teacher, and in our presence told the teacher that he should not spread the poison of social inequality and communal public intolerance in the minds of innocent children. He bluntly, forcefully asked the teacher to either apologize or quit the school and the island. Not only did the teacher regret his behavior, but the strong sense of conviction, a strong opinion or belief, Lakshman Shastri conveyed, said, ultimately, completely reformed, corrected the young teacher. After the school, when school was over, then all the children went to their respected house and told about the events to their respected parents. Lakshman Shastri was the father of Ramanand Shastri and was a great priest, summoned the new teacher, and bluntly, forcefully, he said to that new teacher he should not spread the poison of social inequality. It was unfair to spread social inequality and communal interest in the mind of innocent children. He forcefully said to the new teacher, either he apologized or quit the school and the island. So the new teacher regretted for his behavior. On the whole, the small society of Rameswaram was very rigid, very strong in the term of the segregation. Segregation, separation of different social groups. However, my science teacher, Subramaniam Iyer, though an orthodox conservative Brahmin with a very conservative, orthodox traditional Brahmin with a very conservative, very narrow mind wife, was something of a rebel. He did his best to break social barriers so that people from very background could mingle mixed easily. He used to spend hours with me and would say, Kalam, I want you to develop so that you are on par with the highly educated people of the big cities. In his childhood, there were three fast friends, Ramanand Shastri, Arvinder and Shurpakasa, and they lived together without any difference because the small society of Rameswaram was very strong in the term of segregation, separation. But a new teacher came and he tried to separate Hindu and Muslim. Against his science teacher, Subramaniam Iyer, who was also orthodox Hindu Brahmin but was a very kind person. He tried to break social barrier and he wanted that Hindu and Muslim could mingle easily. So he used to say to Kalam, I want you to develop so that you are on par on the place with the highly educated people of the big cities. Because he loved child Kalam. One day he invited me to his home for a meal. His wife was terrified at the idea of a Muslim boy being invited to dine to food in her ritual pure kitchen. Ritual kept protected from all outside influences for the observation of religion. Ritual pure kitchen. She refused to serve me in her kitchen. Subramaniam Iyer was not perturbed, disturbed, upset, nor did he get angry with his wife, but instead, nevertheless, served me with his own hand and sat down beside me to eat his meal. His wife watched us from behind the kitchen door. I wondered, surprised, whether she had observed any difference in the way I ate rice, drank water, or cleaned the floor after the meal. When I was leaving his house, Subramaniam Iyer invited me to join him for dinner again the next weekend. Observing my hesitation, he told me not to get upset, saying, once you decide to change the system, such problems have to be confronted, faced. When I visited his house the next week, Subramaniam Iyer wife took me inside her kitchen and served me food with her own hand. His science teacher, Subramaniam Iyer, who loved child clam, one day he invited him at his house for dinner. But his wife was very conservative mentality, orthodox. So he refused to serve the food. But Sri Subramaniam Iyer did not say any word and did not angry at her behavior. He served the food by his own hand. And not only this, he sat down beside child clam and ate meal. Then, during partition, he again invited, but child clam hesitated to come again. So, Sri Subramaniam Iyer said to clam not to upset. And he said, once you decide to change the system, such problem had to be confronted, faced. He encouraged to break the barrier. So again, clam came at his house, and at this time, Sri Subramaniam Iyer's wife took him in his ritual pure kitchen and served the food. Then the Second World War was over and Indians' freedom was imminent, close. Indians will build their own India, declared Gandhiji. The whole country was filled with an unprecedented optimism, unprecedented new hope. Optimism, hope, new hope. I asked my father for permission to leave Rameswaram and study at the district headquarters in Rameswaram. He told me as if thinking aloud, Abul, I know you have to go away to grow. Does the seagull not fly across the sun, alone and without a nest? He quoted Khalil Gibran to my hesitant mother. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. The Second World War over, and India got freedom in 1947. At this time, Gandhiji declared that Indians will build their own India. Child Kalam wanted to get more education, so he asked permission to quit Rameswaram and to go to district headquarters in Ramanathpuram. So his father gave the permission, thinking aloud, and said, Abul, I know you have to go away to grow. Does the seagull not fly across the sun, alone and without nest? But his mother hesitated to send his child. So his father quoted Khalil Gibran to his hesitant mother and said, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing, wish for itself. They come through you, but not from you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay, thank you, students.